My name is Ashley Vega, former seasonal ranger, badge number S-1472. This recording is dated 91 days after the last time I saw another human being who still had their original eyes. If you find this tape, burn it. You're listening anyway. I'm sorry. You're already inside the radius of the network. I grew up in Chula Vista, right where the city starts sweating into Tijuana. My dad was a Navy welder who came home every night smelling of burnt metal and Corona. My mom cleaned houses in La Jolla for women who called her the help. Well, she raised their kids better than they ever could. That was the mistake that happened between shore leaves. Dad used to say I had salt water in my veins and bad decisions in my blood. He wasn't wrong. When I was 9, he took me camping for the first time. The only time. We went to Yellowstone. He wanted to show me real America. I remember the smell of pine sap and the way the stars looked close enough to cut your fingers on. I remember him letting me hold his old Colt Python while he taught me how to shoot pine cones off a log. I remember the way he smiled when I hit the third one dead center and whispered, "That's my girl." 3 months later, he wrapped his Camaro around a eucalyptus tree, doing 110 on the 805. That's when I got my hands on the Colt. Carried it ever since. That's when I went into foster care. Yellowstone then became the place where my dad was still alive and the only place I ever wanted to be. That's why, in the summer of '94, I lied about my age on the application, drove north on a 400 Datsun with a cracked windshield. Took the first seasonal job they'd give a 19-year-old who still flinches at loud engines. That's how I met Felix. Felix Red Elk, 42, Crow. Ex-smoke jumper who lost half his crew in the '88 fires and never quite forgave the sky for it. He wore the same Broncos windbreaker every day like armor. Carried pictures of his son Jonah in his wallet. Never talked about the wife who left the reservation and never came back. He taught me how to read bear sign, how to splice a winch cable, how to make coffee strong enough to wake the dead. Called me Ashley, till the night I stitched up a gash on his forearm with fishing line and whiskey. Then he started calling me kid. I loved him the way you love the first person who ever makes the world feel safe. Not romantic, just necessary. You love me back the way you love the last person who still believes the world can be safe. We were good at pretending. If you found the other tapes, then you know of the night of the long elk. The night the pretending stopped. The night it all fell apart. Well, if not, this is the short version. The empty campsite, the boombox still screaming Nirvana to nobody, the drag marks, the elk. There wasn't an elk anymore. I left out the part where Felix hesitated before he pulled the trigger. I saw it. One heartbeat where his finger froze on the trigger guard and his lips moved just barely. Jonah? Because the thing wearing the elk had Jonah's eyes. Not the color, the expression. The way Jonah looked in the last photo Felix ever showed me. 12 years old, gap-toothed, holding up a trout almost as big as he was. His son was one of the 411. One day he was there beside Felix, the next he was gone. That's what had driven Felix to become what he was, someone who helped rescue other people. Because he had lost the one thing that he needed to protect. He wouldn't let that happen to anyone else. Now I felt the same way about him. But he had shot anyways, because he had known that he was protecting me. The 308 took the top of the skull clean off. Still, the thing tried to crawl towards us. Fiber optic antlers scraping sparks off the rocks, whispering in Jonah's stolen voice. Daddy, it hurts. It doesn't hurt anymore. It hurts. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt. Please, Daddy, come home so it won't hurt. It doesn't hurt. Felix threw up until there was nothing left but bile and grief. I held back his hair and I had lied to him that it wasn't real. We both knew I was lying. After that, the changes came fast. It was as if there was something spreading through the forest, eating and infecting everything along the way. And then I witnessed it for myself. Jessica, a blonde girl. She never made it out of the park. I told you the hospital story. But what I didn't tell you was that I rode in the ambulance with her. Her hand, the whole way, holding on to mine, while cables grew under her skin, like ivy looking for sunlight. She was conscious for most of it. She apologizing for bleeding on my uniform, kept asking if her boyfriend Eric was going to be okay, kept crying because she couldn't feel her legs anymore. Last thing she ever said to me, right before her pupils blew wide and turned to all I could describe as liquid crystal, melting from her skull, replaced by screens with green and fiber optics behind them, pupils, a camera, the lens flickering and dilating. Her last words, tell my mom I finally found something that loves me back. I didn't know what she was saying. Was she talking about her boyfriend? Was she talking about something else? And the cables finished threading her spine and her mouth opened in a perfect circle. And the voice that came out wasn't hers anymore. It used her vocal cords to recite my social security number, my dad's service number, the exact GPS coordinates to the tree he died under. I still hear that voice when I dream. Felix started wearing turtlenecks in July. He was cold. Montana in July is never cold. And I found the port the night he asked me to stay over. He was asleep on my couch, TV flickering blue across his face. The collar of his t-shirt had ridden down just enough. There it was, a perfect chrome circle at the base of his skull, edges already fused to bone, like it had always belonged there. I sat on the floor and watched him breathe for 3 hours. Thought about putting the Colt that I always carried to his temple, ending it, knowing what he was turning into, that he was hiding it from me, almost broke my heart, but I knew why he was doing it. He was protecting me as much as he could. Thought about kissing him goodbye. Thought about driving us both into Lamar River and letting the water take whatever was left. Instead, I wrapped my arms around my knees and cried until the sun came up. When he woke up, made coffee like nothing had happened and told me I looked like hell. I told him he snored. Both laughed the way people laugh at funerals. Empty, knowing, cautious. Disappearances got worse. We knew why. The Rangers knew why. But no one would say anything. The park never closed. They just rebranded. New signs went up by August. Experience nature's next evolution. Animatronic megafauna. Exhibits appeared overnight. Metal skeletons wrapped in real hide. Eyes that tricked you when you weren't looking. Tourists loved them. Took selfies. Posted captions like, "So realistic, 10 out of 10. I'd get eaten again." I tried to quit. Jake, my supervisor, laughed and handed me a new contract. The salary had tripled. Fine print was in hexadecimal. That's when Felix stopped coming to work. I knew it in my heart that he had been taken and that I was next. And even if I tried to run away, I would turn into one of them. Scratched my arm, feeling the itch of what I could only assume were the wires underneath my skin, creating almost pock marks across and down my arm and shoulder. Now I wore a jacket every day, just as Felix had done. The official story, though, was a family emergency back on the reservation. But I found his windbreaker and a note. It said, "I'll always love you like a daughter, the daughter I never had." Nothing else. That's all he needed to say to me. I knew, and he knew. I couldn't do it, so he had done it himself. Or I had hoped he had. There was always a fear inside of me. Like I felt like I was still connected to him, that there was still something there. Then I noticed it. On the inner lining of the windbreaker was the picture of Jonah. He had left this one final task to me, to end his suffering and to spread the joy that was Jonah before the monster had taken him, like all the others. And now it was spreading like wildfire. No one could do anything about it because everyone embraced it. Even if I was a single voice against it, I will continue to fight. That was the last time I cried. I knew if I ran away, I would never find any answers. And I felt connected still to the park because of my dad. It was still the place he felt alive in. And now I had both of them, Felix and my dad, staring over my shoulder, protecting me. And slowly but surely, others disappeared. Not just tourists, other rangers as well. Everyone who had whispered that they wanted to leave was suddenly gone. At first, it didn't seem like anything, but eventually it became a pattern. And now, I can remember the one thing that Felix told me above else. The Crow word for courage is the same word for stubborn. Against the world, I would fight. I had stayed too long. But that night, after that night, I ran. I couldn't take it anymore. I don't know if it was a dream, but I'd seen him standing there. Felix. There was something wrong with him. Crown of wires coming from his skull, as if directing him like antenna. He was waiting for me at the north entrance. He looked healthy, younger. The port on his neck had spread into a crown of chrome across his shoulders. And his eyes were the same warm brown I remembered. The pupils were fiber optic camera rings, the same as Jessica's. They were spinning that green tint of data behind them. And then he held out his hand. "Come home, kid," he said. And his voice was still Felix, still the man who taught me how to splice cable and make coffee strong enough to wake the dead. We fixed it. No more fires, no more missing kids, no more lonely. Behind him, the gates had been replaced with a perfect arch of bone and copper. Thousands of human fingers still wearing wedding rings interlaced to form the words, "Welcome to the network." I looked at his hand, looked at my own arm, already half black, plates shifting under the skin like something alive trying to get comfortable. I shook my head and looked back up. The arch was gone, but Felix was still standing there, still staring into me with those missing eyes. And I only had one choice. Whether he was real or not, it didn't matter. I raised the Colt, my trusty sidekick, the only one I had left now. I saw his lips move even though they never touched his eyes, and he never flinched. He just mouthed it, but I knew, "I love you, kid." That was it. It was almost soft as a snowfall, and then I pulled the trigger. Bullet punched through his chest and kept going, trailing sparks and blood that smelled like hot circuitry. He smiled, thankful, almost, and folded to the ground. The network screamed through every animal in the park at once. A sound like dial-up modem, mating calls, and dying children. I ran. I had to. I couldn't take it anymore. I've been running for 91 days. Sometimes the arm wakes up and tries to phone home. Sometimes it wins for a few minutes. I wake up miles closer to the park with blood under my fingernails that isn't mine. Sometimes I dream about Felix and Jonah fishing together in a river made of starlight. I almost turn the truck around, but I keep driving because someone has to remember that once upon a time, Yellowstone was just trees and geysers and a place where a little girl held her dad's hand and learned how to shoot pine cones. Someone has to remember that love used to be warmer than bandwidth. If you're hearing this, you're close enough for the signal to taste you. Get in your car. Drive south until the radio stops screaming in binary. Don't look in the rearview mirror. Whatever you do, don't answer when the elk with your father's eyes, or your brother's eyes, or your mother's eyes, or your daughter's eyes come asking for you to come home. And then I wake to the static and the soft clicks of the dial-up and the connection, and I hear Felix's voice inside of the network saying, "We are eternal. You will join us one day. You cannot outrun the network." And through the network, a woman's voice. "We saved you a spot right next to Felix." The chill of the name on my lips caused the car to spin out. I stopped in the middle of the road, heart pounding, the words repeating on my lips. Lisa. 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 She's all I can think of now. I hold the Colt in my hand, pointed at my temple, finger shaking, questioning myself. But I always put it down, put the car in reverse, get back on the road, and just make another tape, tell another soul, leave another crumb. Maybe one day Someone will put the pieces together.